I'm Rebecca, and welcome to our echo session for today. I want to maybe just do quick introductions and let you know who's here in the room with me. We have James McMurray, who's our IT manager, and Lucia Diaz-French, who is our education and prevention coordinator, and Jesse Everts, who is our VP for clinical services. And again, I'm Rebecca, and I'm the coordinator for this effort and the education and prevention specialist here at Wayside. We also have our speaker today, and Emily Truscott is from Director of Communications at Tubman. And let's reach out and just see who else is with us. Irene, could you unmute and introduce yourself?
We can't hear you.
Well, we can't hear you.
No? Oh, yeah, I can hear you a little bit.
It's coming.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Maybe if I get closer. Okay, I'm Irene Churchill. I work at the American Indian Family Center in East St. Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nelda, are you with us? You'd have to unmute yourself if you're on your phone.
Okay, let me see
There
if
you
I
go.
could.
We got it taken care of. Just to let us know who you are.
Yeah, this is Nelda Goodman.
Thank you. Is there anyone with you? Because we can't see you when you're on your phone.
I know, I can't get this thing to work. I just now put my headphone on now.
Okay.
Thanks, Nelda.
Well, great. We're going to go ahead and start hearing our presentation from Emily and learn a little bit more about Tubman. And then please feel free. She had said that she's very comfortable with questions anytime, so you don't need to hold things to the end. If you want to pose a question, just unmute yourself and or write it in the chat, and we'll make sure we can integrate you into the conversation. Okay? Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you for having me here today. As Rebecca said, my name is Emily Truscott. I'm the Director of Communications at Tubman. I hope the information that I have is helpful, but as was already said, please feel free to ask questions as we go. Stop me at any time if I need to clarify or add anything, just whatever is most helpful for you that's listening. A little bit about me, just so you know who you're talking to today. I have been at Tubman for about 2.5 years now. I am as the Director of Communications. Let's see. I obviously do communications work as well as our public policy initiatives, a lot of community outreach and education. I oversee our volunteer program as well as development support and things like that. So really lots of things around engaging the broader community, people who may not know as much about Tubman, and just trying to hopefully get them connected in some way. I was previously with the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. So I am from Missouri. I moved to Minnesota in January of 2016.
Wow.
January is not the best time to move to Minnesota, but it's all worked out. And then previously I was in journalism and was a domestic violence advocate. I did legal advocacy in Missouri, helping people with orders for protection and hotline calls. And then I threw a few photos up there just so you see my family and my dog. That's me. Let's see. Okay, so Tubman. Our mission, I always like to start with our mission statement because I feel like we've packed a lot into that sentence. Our mission as an organization is to advance opportunities for change so that every person can experience safety, hope, and healing. We tend to focus in our day-to-day work on that safety, hope, and healing piece, and we really feel like all three of those are critical. And there's kind of a progression that, the safety piece, that's your immediate crisis intervention, what someone needs at that moment, as well as the emotional support, helping them find hope for their future, and helping them envision what their future could look like after trauma. And then that ongoing healing, which, as we know, can take a lifetime in some situations. So it's an ongoing process. We deliberately put the word experience in there as the verb, that people can experience these things, because sometimes it just may be for a short amount of time, or maybe they find safety for a little bit, and they make a decision to return to an unhealthy relationship because they're not ready to give up on that other person yet, or something. And so it's not always ongoing. It's not always, oh, you got there and you're done. It can be a work in progress, and there can just be sometimes little glimmers of that hope and healing along the way. And then working back to the very beginning part, the advancing opportunities for change. I'll talk a little bit about the ecological model that we use later on, but that's really about not just working with individuals, but working with our community partners, working with legislators, working with social issues in a broader spectrum, and really looking at what can we do as far as making things better, not just for individual people, but a broader community. So our vision, what we want to see in the world: thriving people, healthy relationships, peaceful community. We tried to keep that one simple after the vision, or after the mission statement. And then also Tubman, our values. I like to share these as well too, just because I think they say so much about how we try to approach our services, how we try to treat every person that we work with, whether they are a community partner or a client, or each other as colleagues in this work. So integrity, respect for each other and different viewpoints, innovation, looking at ways to incorporate feedback, listen to the community, what is most helpful, are we offering the right services in the right way, that sort of thing. Partnership, of course, we know no one organization can do everything. And then social justice, again, getting at some of that big picture change. Our name is Tubman. We're named after Harriet Tubman. She is our namesake, our inspiration. We reference her a lot. The motto there, "Keep Going," was Harriet Tubman's personal motto. And, according to the stories, when she was working on the Underground Railroad and traveling with people, that was always what she just kept saying, is just keep going a little further. And we talk about that a lot, because that's often where people are when they come to Tubman for services. And sometimes it's just, you may not know what's coming next, you may not know what the future looks like, but just keep going a little bit forward. And that's where we are. My own notes. So the name of the organization is Tubman. Some people have probably heard of us or worked with us in a different name. We were talking a little bit about this earlier. We used to be the Harriet Tubman Women's Shelter, and then it was Harriet Tubman Women's Center in Minneapolis. That was the third domestic violence program in the nation. They later merged with Family Violence Network. Family Violence Network was based in the St. Paul East Metro area, and Harriet Tubman was in Minneapolis. They merged, I think, around the year 2000. So our primary service area is Hennepin, Washington, and Ramsey counties. But of course, we have people coming from all over. Chrysalis, a Center for Women, was another Metro-based organization that really focused on the mental and chemical health aspect of trauma, support groups, legal services, things like that. They merged with the other ones in about 2007, if I remember right, 2006, 2007. And then finally, a few years after that, the Elder Care Rights Alliance also joined. They were a small, had been a legislative-based group for a while, and merged, and it kind of brought some expertise around family issues and family violence from the senior citizen perspective, and things like, senior citizens being exploited maybe by family members or caregivers, or those other things, which just tied in with the broader issues of domestic violence, family violence, and things like that. So I still run into people all the time who again, maybe they know Chrysalis, maybe they know Harriet Tubman or Family Violence Network in the East Metro, things like that. So I just try to let people know all those organizations are still around. We're all just Tubman now. We have 3 locations. Tubman West, that building on the far left side of your screen, is in South Minneapolis. It's right off of First Avenue and about Lake Street, that area right off of 35. That is our West Metro shelter. We have 55 shelter beds there, as well as 11 transitional housing apartments and other community-based programs that are based there. The building in the middle, Tubman East, is in Maplewood. It is the rest of our shelter beds. We have 75 shelter beds over there, as well as some additional shelter space specifically for youth who have been exploited or trafficked, things like that. And then again, our kind of East Metro, the community-based programs, legal services, and things like that are based out of that building. That is a former monastery that we purchased from the Sisters of, I think, St. Benedictine and converted. So it's a pretty cool space. And then the one on the right was the building that was Chrysalis Center for Women before they merged. We kept that building. We call it the Tubman Chrysalis Center now, and that is our licensed outpatient clinic. So a lot of the mental and chemical health services are based there since it's licensed.
Yeah.
Who we serve. We have a very broad continuum of services. So we serve victims of family, dating, partner violence, sexual assault, exploitation, trafficking, which isn't up there, people with mental health issues, chemical health issues. The common thread between all of those, sometimes people hear that list and they go, that is a lot, that's all over the place. But it's really about trauma. It's really about people who have experienced significant trauma in their lives. And then that last bullet point, which again, I just try to emphasize, is that we serve all ages, from newborn infants to senior citizens, every age in between, and we serve all genders as well in all of our programs, which is kind of unique, particularly when it comes to emergency shelter and housing services, that we work with people no matter how they identify. We have sheltered men, single fathers with children, single men, things like that too. So we try to create a space working with other people who are in the building and what their needs are to really work with anyone who needs help. Am I going too fast?
No, you're doing great.
So now I'm going to dive into our services, and we have a lot of them. So again, please stop me if I start going too quickly through these. Our number one service, our 24-hour hotline, it's answered by trained advocates anytime. They do immediate safety planning, asking people questions about their situation and trying to figure out what strengths and resources do they have that can help them manage the situation, or what sort of services do they need to be connected to, whether it's at Tubman or it's at another organization. Crisis intervention, information, again, referrals, connections, things like that is a huge piece. We average about 10,000 calls a year through that line. Some of those people may come back and try to come into shelter. They may get in touch with a legal department. They may be referred to one of our therapists if that's what they're looking for. Or they may just need to talk to someone that night. And that's all they need. So that's a big piece of it. We have, I mentioned before, the total of 130 beds in the 2 different shelters on either side of the metro. That's a picture there of one of the rooms, so people can kind of see. They usually have bunk beds. It's, I think, a twin on top and maybe a double on the bottom. We try to work with families. If it's a larger family, we'll put two bedrooms together, or across the hall or something, so it's accessible, and then closet space. And of course, we provide toiletries, clothing, shampoo, clean sheets, all of those sorts of things. So normally there's more on the shelves when a family comes in, because we'll try to prepare rooms for them. But sometimes people have a hard time picturing what a shelter might look like, or they might think of more sort of temporary emergency shelter, or like cots in a gym type of those emergency type things. And so I like to show people what the rooms look like. And then I mentioned we have those additional beds in the East Metro, specifically for youth. And then if they have children with them as well. So it's kind of a special area of the building for those younger ages. See, our legal services department. As I mentioned before, we work in Hennepin, Ramsey, and Washington County. So we have legal teams that focus on those specific counties and the jurisdictions within them. If someone calls our hotline and says, I need help with an order for protection, about the first question they're going to get is, what county is it? And then they will connect them with the on-call advocate who's covering that county at the moment. We do a lot of orders for protection, helping people go through those forms, understand the process, write it up, take it to the judge and the clerk, and just sort of help people see through that process, because while you don't need an attorney for it, for a lot of people, the legal system is hard. It's for people who have never had to go through that before, it can be a challenge. We do legal advocacy for victims of crime. We work with about 20 different police jurisdictions that when they respond to a domestic assault situation, they'll help connect us with the victim so that we can follow up and say, here are your rights, here are some of your options. If you want to come in and speak to someone and learn more about what's going on and what you would like represented to the judge as kind of your opinion on how this case should be pursued, then we can help with some of that. We do offer law clinics for people who need help with self-representation or family law. We have about anywhere from 100 to 150 volunteer attorneys in any given year who will come in and meet with people at these clinics and, maybe spend an hour just talking about their situation. And if they can't do ongoing, pro bono attorney representation, they can at least maybe help them draft a brief or a motion or help them understand a form that they were given or things like that. And then we do have some limited pro bono attorney representation. Of course, there's never as many attorneys as what you'd like for those cases, but for particularly challenging or complicated cases, we try to make referrals, usually around either very complicated child custody issues or immigration issues. We have a partnership with the Immigrant Law Center to work on those cases specifically. And then a lot of times what we're seeing now is situations where maybe our client, the survivor of the violence, the defendant doesn't have an attorney, but the opposing party gets one. And then we try to find an attorney to help balance out that situation so that both sides have attorney representation. Good. Yeah. Our clinical division, as I said before, most of those services are based out of our Chrysalis Center in Minneapolis, although we also have therapists that work in our shelters. So even in the shelter in Maplewood, there's someone on site who can talk to someone. But our clinic, we have therapy for individuals, couples, and families. We specialize kind of in dialectical behavior therapy. And we have a co-occurring mental and chemical health treatment program for people who are dealing with both of those issues simultaneously. And so it's a combination of meeting with a mental health therapist, meeting with a chemical health specialist, some groups and things like that. We have a program for people, both men and women, who have been violent or abusive in their relationships. It is a 21-week therapeutic program. It's not intended to be punitive. That's not the focus is. It's about building skills and learning how to develop new skills for managing emotions, communicating in relationships, and addressing your triggers or things that might escalate you in a more healthy way. Most of the people in that program are court ordered in some ways, so we work very closely with probation officers and things like that to help people go through that. But then we also have both men and women who choose to come into it, who maybe call and say, I know I need to change something, or they say, my partner is telling me they're going to leave me if I don't do something, so I'm trying to do something. So it can go with both. And then we do offer chemical health assessments, Rule 25 assessments, That's something we get asked about a lot, so I try to mention it. People can either call and make an appointment for that, or we do offer walk-in hours as it's available too. That's a quick rundown of our services. And like I mentioned before, we serve people who have experienced all kinds of different things. So, you don't have to have experienced domestic violence to use any of those services. You don't have to, be experiencing one of those issues that I mentioned earlier. These services are open to anyone in the community. It's just sort of the addressing of trauma is where our kind of specialty tends to be.
Yeah, that's great. That's a lot.
It's a lot. Let's see. We have youth programs. See, that's a picture from an activity, a face painting, not too long ago. We focus on not just youth who are, staying in our residential programs and their parents. Of course, we do a lot of that advocacy. We also do a lot with unaccompanied youth or youth who are homeless, or if not quite homeless, almost. Maybe they're crashing at friends' houses and those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of outreach. We have workers who go to places like the Safe Zone and other places out in the community, just trying to say, hey, let's talk. Let's figure out what your goals are. Do you need help finding a long-term place to live? Do you need help getting back enrolled in school somewhere? Or, what can we do to help you with this situation? Maybe they're homeless because of violence at home, and can we help work with the family in that sort of way? So we do a lot of outreach and advocacy around that. We have our Kids in Transition support group. That's a free 6-week group for, like it says, kids who their families are in transition at some point. A lot of times that could be divorce, or maybe it's the death of a parent or someone close to them, or those types of things. So working with kids ages about 5 to 12, and then there's a 13 and up and older teen focused group as well. We have our VIP Voices in Prevention in-school prevention curriculum. That is a 6-week pre- and post-tested curriculum. We're in about 45 schools around the metro area where youth educators go through this with students in middle schools and high schools, talking about healthy dating and violence and what are red flags for dating, particularly for teens. A lot of it is very technology focused, or even just learning how to communicate what you want out of a relationship. How do you tell your partner what you want from them? That's hard enough for anyone to do, let alone teenagers that are maybe just dating for the first time. So helping kids walk through that process of identifying what they're looking for and how to have those types of conversations, how to be aware of what behavior is okay and what's not okay. Like I said, going back to the technology piece, sometimes it's, teenagers saying, my boyfriend texts me all night long and I can't sleep. And they send me hundreds of text messages a day. And trying to say, like, that's not okay. I know he says he loves you, but that's not what a healthy love looks like, and things like that. And a lot of times too, it's helping teens identify when they're the ones engaging in behavior like that. And recognizing, like, that's not okay. And what we've seen recently is that it's girls and boys both, as they're trying to navigate these things. And so having those conversations to hopefully build some skills and some knowledge around that. So that's our Voices in Prevention piece. And then we have the MVP leadership program. A lot of the teens who go through that VIP curriculum, they want to continue to do more and keep developing those skills. So the movement for violence prevention is just a voluntary, it's kind of a leadership development piece for teens who maybe want to go on to be mentors to their peers or do some other projects in their schools, and sort of take that a little bit farther in their lives. So helping them come up with, projects or initiatives and things like that in their own groups. And then we have the North Star Youth Outreach Center, which is a very casual, low bar sort of space. We wanted to make it very easy for particularly youth and young adults who are maybe not certain about Tubman, maybe they don't know about who we are and what we do, to to be able to just drop in and maybe learn a little bit more, test the waters a little, talk to someone, see if we might be a place that they would feel comfortable coming back. So we offer things like shower spaces and laundry facilities and snacks and bus cards and just, things where maybe they can drop in, get a couple brochures about something, pick up a few snacks, and they can go on their way. But then what we found is a lot of times they'll come back again later and want to talk a little bit more about what's going on in their lives. So we have that outreach center at our Maplewood location right now. And then we also recently opened a second location at the Maplewood Mall space. So a lot of teens, again, if they're homeless or trying to not be home for some reason, even now, even today, they still go to the mall and hang out. So they might drop in and talk to some people there. We have computers if maybe they just need to sit down and use a computer to print something or that type of thing. So that's been going really well. Yeah. Let's see. And then kind of around all of those, we have what we call our supportive services. And these are all geared towards that long-term, finding success, however you define that, after you've moved out of the shelter or when you're ready to kind of move forward. But we have drop-in support groups that people can come by. We have workshops around finding housing, around, finances, how to take better control of your budget, or how to understand your credit score, or, maybe you've had your identity stolen, and how do you get that cleaned up on your credit so that you can then rent an apartment, and managing some of those sorts of situations. Helping people with goal planning and finding other resources in the community, helping people write resumes, or maybe enroll in some sort of a training program. We try to do a lot with connecting them to other nonprofits that focus on that sort of jobs development type of piece. Again, computer labs, we have a clothing closet, and then we have what we call the Freedom Fund that covers just direct client assistance, which just means sort of those little barriers, those little things that people need that we can help provide. A lot of times it's things like fees for paperwork. If someone has had to leave a violent situation, maybe they don't have their child's birth certificate anymore and they need to go get a copy of it from the clerk. So what the fee for that, sometimes if they are staying in a place, maybe it's changing all the locks on doors so that an abusive partner, their key no longer works, things like that. Sometimes it's just some groceries to get till next payday, or again, gas cards or things like that. It's those types of little assistance things to just try to remove barriers so that people can just get that little extra bit of help to move forward with their goals. So, with that, make sure check my notes. Make sure I cover things. Okay. Any questions about all of that?
Excuse me. That in-school prevention curriculum, is that available on its own or only in schools right now? Like online? Is it something that parents could access?
Right now, no. We've talked about some of that. It is a 6-week curriculum, but we've also adapted it into shorter chunks because sometimes teachers say, well, like, what? I can't fit 6 weeks, but I still think this is really important. So maybe someone comes in and does a 1 or 2 time presentation so that it's customizable in some way. And it's pretty much right now just as people ask for it and as our educators can fit it into their schedules.
I wonder about how that was. I mean, in our residential treatment centers for adults, they're young adult women, but still I think some of those skills could be really helpful. So whether that would ever be possible.
I think so. We could talk more about options. So those are all of our services. The what that Tubman does, the what we do. Moving a little bit more into just how we serve. This is what we strive for with everyone. We strive to be, very holistic. We believe that, people are not just the sum of what has happened to them. And so we work really hard to acknowledge that and have people come to us and talk about what they want to talk about or address the problems that they want to focus on, not what I'm going to say, or, where it's not a situation where I'm saying, well, you experience violence, so you need to be doing this and that. We don't do that. Along the same lines, trying to be very person-centered, not focusing on the victimization or trauma, but on the person and what are their goals for the future. How do they define them? Very strengths-based. We believe that everybody has strengths that they can draw on. And so it's a process of helping them identify what those are and how can they use those to move forward in their lives. Trauma-informed, as I mentioned before, that's sort of the undercurrent with all of the things that we try to do. So a lot of training into that and staying up to date on, the new research and the science piece of all of that. And then the ecological model framework that we've used before. So the ecological model. This is the scientific part of the presentation, getting at, causes of things. And we believe, that no one factor explains why this happens. It's not one thing. It's often a combination of lots and lots of things and lots of layers. And so we try to address things from these multiple perspectives and layers. There's, individuals, why someone might be more at risk to violence because of, their home situation, their parents, psychological issues, did they experience violence growing up or addiction or other things like that? So there are those individual factors. There's the relationship ones, violent friends, gangs, and what sort of impact does that have on a young person? Those types of relationships, the broader community, your schools, your neighborhoods, and things like that. What sort of factors from that level affect the decisions people make in their individual lives? And then again, the broader just societal, social policies, cultural norms, all of those types of things. So we try to address people's situation, looking at all of those different layers and how they affect the decisions that people make and how they view their own lives and view their own agency within it, how they see the decisions that are available to them. We believe, again, as part of that everybody has the ability to grow, to change behavior, that everybody has power and control. Sometimes in sort of the domestic violence specific fields, we talk about power and control, usually in the hands of the abusive partner and how that's a bad thing. Power and control, like anything, can be used for good or bad. And so it's trying to help people see that they have power and control in their own lives and helping them be empowered. And what does that look like for them? And again, we believe violence is a learned behavior and it can be unlearned, and it's hard, it's challenging, but getting back to the services I mentioned before, working with people that have been violent in the past, we couldn't do that work if we didn't believe that it was possible for people to change.
Yeah.
And then again, I kind of skipped over the safety one, but like I mentioned before with our mission about people experiencing safety, it's not a one and done type of an issue. It's as your life changes, as you grow, as your goals change, as where you are in your life changes, you need to continually sort of reassess what you need for that. Helping people through that too. Let's see. Then this is the big question. I'm sort of jumping topics, but just a little bit, because it comes up so often. Why would someone stay in such a relationship? And I've had this conversation actually not long ago with my own parents, talking about that. And I just started saying, well, let's look at an example. Like, why would someone do this? They're afraid. Mm-hmm. They're ashamed of what's happened to them. If they're in an LGBTQ relationship, maybe not everyone in their life knows that. Maybe they're afraid of a boss finding out or a family member finding out. And, and maybe that's a threat that their partner is using against them. With immigration, there have been many situations where, maybe a couple comes here and one partner has a work permit and the other partner's here as their spouse. But if they left, they don't have a work permit. Those types of complicated situations. or children in that sort of situation. What, if someone left and returned to a home country, what about the children and things? Language barriers can be very, very hard to find services, find the help you need. Financial dependency is huge for people. Children, again, nobody wants to leave their children, religious or cultural reasons. That could mean a lot of things. If you feel like you have a lot of pressure from other family members, from people, and the thought of leaving a spouse sometimes feels like leaving that whole network and that whole support system. Isolation, low self-esteem are huge pieces. People feeling like they have no one to talk to, or that they somehow deserve what's happening to them. Disability, chronic health issues. Maybe someone is a caregiver, or someone's dependent on them for health insurance, can be huge. And then lastly, love, because a lot of times what we hear from people who come to Tubman is I love my partner, I love my spouse, I love the father or mother of my children. I don't want to leave this relationship, but I want this to stop. I want the violence to stop. And so trying to help people work through those really complicated emotions, and that takes time. I normally try to make that piece a little more of a conversation, and I have people in the audience come up with those themselves.
Yeah.
Didn't do that today, but and there's more. There's more, and a lot of times it's not just one. It's lots of things on that list. But I do like to highlight that because I think the more people really stop and think about those types of issues, the easier it is to understand where people are coming from, and then also what they're asking for. If someone's not ready to leave, but they're just asking for some sort of support or help, a lot of times friends and family, it's really hard for friends and families to watch a loved one in a situation like that, and they want to encourage them to leave, get out, do something different, and so just trying to foster some of that understanding and that patience, because you have to wait till people are ready to make those types of changes. But you can still offer support. You can still reinforce that, you don't deserve any of this. This isn't your fault, and when you are ready to do something different, that I'm here to help.
I was thinking underneath a lot of those reasons is what, for our women, a lot of times it's like they don't know anything different. That's what they saw growing up, and that's what they have recreated, and they've never had a different kind of relationship. And so that's so hard to show them. And so it's led to a lot of these reasons. And that's such a hard situation to see any way out of.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't even put on there chemical health, addiction issues, which can be huge. And we know a lot of times what we've seen is, if a partner is using, the other person will too, to try to find a connection. So we're going to do this together, or sometimes partners force their partners to, because someone who is addicted can be easier to control in an unhealthy relationship. So there's a lot of factors that I didn't even put that one up there. But, Okay. So the last piece, referrals, how to contact Tubman for any of these services. And I know that's a lot of phone numbers up there. All of them are on the website, tubman.org. You can find sections on the website about all the different services I talked about today, and in a lot of cases, specific numbers to call. But these are the ones that I do like to highlight. Of course, that 24-hour crisis and resource line, you can give that out to anyone. If you want to just make a referral to someone to get in touch with Tubman about any of those, that would be the number to call, that 0000. And like I said, it's answered any time of day. For the youth services specifically that I talked about, we do have a texting line. Some teenagers don't really feel comfortable calling strangers on the phone, so we have found that is something nice to offer them. It's just, if you just want to reach out by text message, you can do that. So there's that line. The clinical services, in particular, that licensed clinic there, the Chrysalis Center, that's the intake number for that. That's a good number to call again, if you want to set up an appointment for a Rule 25 assessment, or just sort of look at what's the availability for this program, that program, or get more information about those. And then just our general administrative line, that 3333 number at the bottom, it's answered during business hours only, but people can leave messages, or a lot of times people will call that because that's the number that they found, and we can connect with any other department or on-call advocates or anything like that. And then we were talking earlier before this started, and the number that I did not put up there that I do want to highlight real quick is the Day One statewide network. So all of the domestic violence shelters in Minnesota are part of this Day One network. So if you call Tubman and ask for shelter space, a lot of times we are full, but we can call this Day One line, and it's a database where it's updated, where they can say, okay, you're full, but this other location is indicating that they have open space right now. So it's a good way to connect across the state to find things. And that number, I'm just going to say it out loud, is 866-223-1111. And again, if you call Tubman, we can make that phone call and help connect people. But one more time, that's 866-223-1111. That can be helpful too for people specifically looking for shelter services. So
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No
I learned a
problem.
lot, and I've known about you for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions? How about Irene or Nelda or Marie?
Hi, Jessica. She's
Yeah.
Wayside Family
Oh,
Treatment.
I can't see that. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. I have a few questions, and I like that you mentioned the Day One network. That's something that our organization, we're planning on doing that training with them so that we can get also access to that network.
nice.
A few months back, we were awarded a portion of the Safe Harbor Expansion Grant, and so we're in our year one of that grant, where we're researching and connecting with other organizations in the metro area, doing work with victims and survivors of sex trafficking and sex exploitation, specifically youth. And I know that Tubman is listed as one of the agencies in East Metro. And is that still true? I know you talked about it earlier.
It is. So we used to be the East Metro Regional Navigator.
Yeah.
That actually ended last year.
Oh, okay.
And now, off the top of my head, I don't remember who the new regional navigator is in the East Metro. I want to say
I know who it is. Yeah, I think it's Trevor Burberry.
Yes.
Okay,
And Trevor used to work at Tubman. And I can't remember what organization he went and works for now. But so we're not the regional navigator anymore, but we do still offer those services. So when I mentioned before that we had shelter beds specifically for youth who have been exploited and trafficked and things, so we still do that direct service piece. So we're still
awesome.
we're still very connected with that, even though we're not the regional navigator anymore.
All right, cool. And then for that drop-in center, what are the hours for the North Star Youth Outreach Center?
So if someone comes to our Maplewood location, it's always accessible since it's a 24-hour program. There are dedicated activities 3 to 7 p.m. most nights, but like I said, the building itself is always accessible. For the Maplewood Mall, that one I am going to have to look up for you.
Okay. So the North Star Youth Outreach Center in Maplewood, it's 24 hours. Anyone can just walk in?
And that's at our Tubman East location.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
good.
Let's see.
And I'm.
What?
Oh,
Did you have more, Irene?
Yeah. I guess I just have maybe 2 more questions about the drop-in center.
yeah.
Do the youth have to have insurance to be there?
Nope.
Or parent consent?
No.
No? Okay.
No. And I do have for you the hours for the Maplewood Mall location.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So right now, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 a.m. to noon, and then 3 to 7 p.m. And also Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that is on our website. So, so people can find that there, or if it changes or something, it would be on our website.
Alrighty. And then for the Maplewood at Tubman East, do they have to be youth for the drop-in center resources?
They're too, right?
Do they have to be youth for the drop-in center or to stay there? What was
for the Maplewood shelter?
Oh, so we have 75 family violence beds, so that's any ages. And then we have an additional, I think, 10 beds right now specifically for youth who have been exploited and trafficked. So we have both those options at Maplewood. Sorry, I was having trouble hearing.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And like I said, most of this is on our website, so you can look there, or of course call and find more details about things like that. I'm sure we would love that, especially given, the work that you guys are currently engaged into, that, I'd be happy to connect you with some of our youth program direct staff or people who work in that sex trafficking youth shelter program if you would like.
Anyone else have any questions? We're about to wrap up. Jessica or Jessie?
I haven't formulated the question, but I think something we run into a lot as a trauma-informed agency is that our clients also interact with a lot of systems that are not trauma-informed. And does Tubman have some services, or kind of is that wrapped in with the advocacy services that you have about how to work with those other systems that are often very traumatizing?
It is. That is a big piece of it, particularly, and maybe these are just top of mind at the moment because I know there's more examples, but particularly in our legal services program, that's something that our advocates really work with, is navigating a legal system that doesn't necessarily always understand what they've been going through, and also just helping people understand the limitations of that system and what they may be looking for or hoping for, or what they may see as justice. Sometimes it's not possible. And so, a lot of time goes into having conversations with people to try to help them prepare for that and navigate that as best they can. And then also with housing, especially with some of the changes around sort of the coordinated access and coordinated entry and things like that, just helping people understand that system if they're looking for longer term housing, things like that.
Right.
Yeah. Those are tough conversations sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank those of you who've joined us, and thank Emily so much for sharing all this information. We'll be following up with an evaluation form and invitation again for our next ECHO session, which will be October 18th. And at that point, we're going to be hearing from two of the regional coordinators for the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drug Prevention Network throughout the state. The rep for Region 7, which is the 7-county metro area, and Region 2, which is up in the northeast corner of our state, will talk to us about how service providers can become a part of working with their community in looking at prevention efforts. And then in November, we're going to have our cultural consultants who are based out of the Minnesota Board on Aging, and they're going to talk to us about how they help organizations reach out to diverse communities with kind of an eye to being culturally appropriate with more senior participants. And as always, we would love your input if there are topics that you would like to see us talk about, or individuals you'd like to have us invite to participate. Email me. You've got my email. I send you all stuff, and I'm happy to do that legwork. So you just let us know, and Lucia will be helping with that effort as well as we go forward. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again, I hope, in a couple weeks.
Thanks for having me join you.
Thank you so much.
You.